Good morning.
Thanks for making it to Amsterdam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Wake up.
So let's get an update on the fund, right? So I was reading that you are targeting to raise 250 million by year end. And this chart, the next chart, kind of ranks SOSV as the third most active lead investor in 2018.
Yep.
So have you raised the 250 million already?
Close. So we signed 218.
Okay.
So we get to live to invest again.
All right.
We're oversubscribed for the last 32, so we might actually take more than the 250.
Okay.
The key thing is that for SOSV, Sean, our founder, for our last fund, he put up 100 of the $150 million in the last fund himself. And this fund, he's putting in what he's got left over, which is another 40.
Okay.
So the outside money is going from 50 million to almost like 4x.
Okay, so
210.
more outside money.
So more outside money.
Okay, so let's talk about what are the top 3 areas of interest right now. So what are you going to do with that war chest, whatever that amount is?
So we're a bit strange in that we invest in a number of different verticals, but I run internet and software. Mm-hmm. So one of the main areas we're focused on, the first area is sort of the mobile first, mobile only, the next 4 billion users. So there's a ton of people coming onto the internet for the first time. They use mobile phones. If you look at India, the amount you have to pay for data went down 90%. So people started using their mobile phones for everything. Before, they were really careful about using data.
Okay.
Now they're watching TV all day. Because you can get 1 gig per day.
Okay.
Not for $5 a month, but for $5 for 3 months.
So you're really interested in mobile first, no matter the vertical that you're in.
Well, we look at areas where people are spending lots and lots and lots of time.
Okay, and where are they spending the time?
Well, watching TV. Yeah, so you got Game of Thrones or whatever. So think about the internet. The number one challenge with internet is user acquisition. The reason why we have super apps is because if you have a user, adding another service around that user, your acquisition cost is 0. So for Asian companies, why wouldn't you do everything else? For a new company coming in, you either have to ally yourself with one of these super apps, or you need to raise a couple $100 million from SoftBank Vision. Because customer acquisition cost, because of Google and Facebook, is so high that the customer acquisition cost, the amount you have to spend to get a new user, is here, and your lifetime revenue is somewhere down here.
So you think that the future in Asia is super apps? You think that the consumers like me are going to go to Grab and just buy everything from Grab? So
in China, there's a new unicorn coming out every 3.8 days last year. Over half of them are allied with either Alibaba or Tencent because of user acquisition. So I got the advice to not talk about travel.
Who gave you that advice? You are at a travel conference.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess everybody here is bored with travel. No. Talk about cars. Most people think that a car company makes money on cars. For a long, long time, the money is not made in cars. The money is made in car financing, maybe some car insurance, and then spare parts. But with self-driving cars, with Uber, with Didi, the model is changing. And you can no longer make money on the cars. You can't make money on the financing because people won't be buying cars anymore.
Right.
You can't make money on the spare parts because that's all being handled by somebody else. So where do you make money? You make money, if you have a car, you've got somebody's attention for a certain period of time. And in the future, they're not going to be driving themselves. They're going to be sitting there.
Yeah, especially in cities like Jakarta where you sit in traffic all the time.
Well, hopefully it'll get a little bit better. But if you have somebody's attention for a certain period of time,
right,
then you can sell them other services. So the car is a way to attract the user. Now, how you monetize that car will probably have nothing to do with transportation. It'll have to do with selling other things.
So do you see a time then when travel companies will actually be making money not of travel, but of other things?
So our investments in travel actually have very little to do with travel. So for booking hotels and booking airlines, everybody's chasing a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Now it's a very big market, but there's really no money in there. and for early stage startup investors like myself, very difficult to break in, right? There's tons of money, and Google's pretty hard to fight with. So what are we looking at? So we look at 5-star hotel. They make 10, 15, 20% margins. It's great. But for one of our companies, Portier, we put a high-end Samsung phone in the hotel room. Now, most normal people wouldn't use that phone, but for some reason, people who stay in Banyan Tree and Marriott's do use the phone. So 70% of the people who stay in these hotels in Thailand and Turkey, across Asia, they use the phone to get a free service. But our phones are a little bit different than Handy in that they promote hotel services right now.
Right.
So
so it's become more than just like data, because data has become really cheap. So people would say that those devices are actually redundant in hotel rooms.
Yeah, most people who stay in Banyan Tree don't understand how to use a SIM card. So at least for now. Okay. So we got them, and then the upsell right now is we're selling a glass of wine. Well, it's a $15 glass of wine that costs 40 cents or something like that, or $1 maybe. So that's very high margin. So on average, we're increasing the revenue per room night by 20%. And this is high margin revenue, not the low margin that you get from the actual room night.
All right.
And this is just the beginning. So very popular right now, activities, adventures, and things like that. But if you look at what people spend money and time on when they are traveling, adventures is actually not that big. What are they really spending money on? They're spending money on food. And for Chinese, 40% of global spend on luxury is China. And 60% of that happens outside of China. So why not try and capture that revenue?
Right.
So we have a company called LuxSense, and they track new and used luxury goods, 140,000 SKUs all around the world, 20 cities, so including Amsterdam. And you can figure out, where can I buy Hermes Birkin bag, used one. Right. And in any city around the world. So if you look at a Rolex Submariner in rose gold in Beijing, costs about $27,000. The same watch, brand new, in New York is $16,000. Okay, so that pays for the travel. And so we're looking at if you look at the car industry or Xiaomi, do they make money on the phones? No, they're selling a $300 phone for $150. It's a loss leader to make money on other services.
All right.
So this is for travel where we're focused on. We're focused on companies that can help hotels make margin.
Extend
because their most valuable resource is the attention of their customer.
Okay.
Not the fact that they sold somebody a hotel room, and they're in a freaking war with the OTAs and everybody else, and so there's less margin. So where's the opportunity? Helping them make money elsewhere.
Okay, so do you feel like the rise of super apps like WeChat and Alipay, they're making it easier for companies in Europe, for example, to track the outbound travelers, right?
To some extent, yeah. But they also want to capture all that revenue themselves. Alibaba's goal is to take over the world. They got their butts kicked in China by Tencent, and the idea is that they want to control first commerce, financial services. And then, travel is it'll take them a while. But the idea is to sell.
They got a plan to 2036.
Yeah, well, they have a 1,000-year plan, so.
All right. So let's talk about the funding climate in China, right? And I was speaking to a Chinese VC, and she said that winter is here. Yeah. Like capital has dried up. So where are the pockets of opportunities if you wanted to get funding from China?
Well, most people here couldn't get funding from China. Chinese investors looking outside are looking after deep tech. But I think winter is here. You can say that before, if you had 3 people, a napkin and a smile, you could get $3 million in a meeting. And now it's the same 3 people with a napkin and a smile, like a PowerPoint. But it might take 6-7 weeks. So last year, funding's down, but it's from 70 to 80 billion down to 40, 50 billion.
Right.
It's still 4 times the size of Europe combined venture.
Right. But Chinese funds are still, they're still going abroad. For example, there seems to be like going to India, right? Ctrip now owns 50% of Make My Trip. I think Chinese funds are going into Yeoh and Tribo in India. So it seems that India is a big attraction for Chinese funds right now.
Yeah, so it's there was a lot of investment into the U.S. and Western Europe, and now Germany is decidedly unfavorable for Chinese companies to come in and buy their hardcore tech. They're sort of trying to block, and U.S. CFIUS is blocking a lot of investment. So where is the Chinese investment going to go? Well, a lot of it's going to Southeast Asia and South Asia. And the goal is to take over the market. Think about it like this: 2016, maybe 3 or 4 Chinese apps out of the top 100 were in India. 3 or 4 Chinese apps were in the top 100. By 2017, 17 of the top 100 were Chinese. Last year, 47 of the top 100 were Chinese. And the local handset players went from 50% market share to 4% market share. Xiaomi is number 1. Samsung is now number 2. And then you've got 3 other Chinese guys making up 3, 4, 5. When you own the customer, when you control their phone, then you can add all those services around it. Xiaomi's already number 1 in Spain.
Yeah.
And Western Europe is sort of next on their list. And again, they're selling hardware as a loss leader for services.
Right. So are there lessons you think that travel companies in Europe can learn from, how the Chinese companies are, tackling markets like Southeast Asia or North Asia? What kind of lessons?
Most in the U.S., at least, I haven't lived in the U.S. in a long time, but in the U.S. you have e-commerce, where you have intent, and then you search on Google, and then you buy something. In China, it's based on trust, because it's a very low-trust society. So if I trust you, then I will buy from you. And people tend to trust services and goods that are on WeChat or on a super app, because the platform itself will police the vendors and make sure that there's that trust there. So one of the most valuable things that travel brands have is they have that trust built up over many years. So look at using that trust to upsell other services, higher margin services. So for our investments, I have a lot of apps, right? We have media apps, we have news apps, we have Find My Cell Phone When I Lost It apps. But we can't make any money on advertising because Google and Facebook eats it all. So how do we monetize that? Well, we're offering other services. We're analyzing our users, and we're offering them things like loans. And so you have media companies, media apps, but they can't make money on the media. So they're making money on offering payday loans, where there's actual real margin and there's a real demand from the user. So you've got resources. Step back a little bit and say, okay, am I really, is like Coca-Cola really a drink company, or are they a lifestyle company? Am I really a hotel chain, or am I a lifestyle company?
So look broader and wider. So hold that thought. And I'm going to invite Lin Xu, partner and advisor Asia from Cambon Partners, and Andrea Traversone, partner Amadeus Capital Partners, to join us on stage. Good morning, Andrea. Good morning, Lin.
Good morning.
Good. Great. So Louise Daley from Accor unfortunately could not make the panel, but I thought I'd still like to share 3 slides that she actually prepared for this discussion. And it was a recent Accor and MasterCard study. And it really shows the first slide showing the rise of the affluent class in Asia. Okay, there you go. So Asian affluent class driving trends and demand for the next generation. And secondly, we see the demand for food and drink experiences, which is huge in Asia. And then the third slide showing kind of the link between experience and loyalty. So, a company like Accor trying to extend, as you were saying, beyond the room, so that's why. So would anyone like to comment on these trends? Like, do you see those food and drink trends being of interest in Asia because it's all part of travel? Andrea, do you want to?
Well, not specifically to food and beverage, but we see the macro trend, which is super attractive to the investment community. If you take a look overall at Southeast Asia, you have a population that is becoming more and more urbanized, but it is still less urbanized than in Latin America, for example. So there is still a lot of growth to go. You have a middle class whose income is going up fast and is digitizing. And there is a lot of catching up to do compared to, once again, Latin America. But more importantly, is a population that is 4.5 times that of Latin America. So there is inherent future potential purchasing power, which is really attractive. And I think this is just a signal of that.
All right. Lin?
I think neuroscience has studies, about how customer retention, basically. And I think when people do experiences, I think this is the moment when they have dopamine reinforcement. So they decide to stick to one thing rather than switching to another option. And I call that addiction. So I think it's not about sitting on a plane or sleeping in a hotel that will get you excited. It's doing experiences.
Okay, so where do you see, William was talking about the opportunities in Asia. Where do you see the opportunities other than the macro trends? Andrea, what are your vested interests in Southeast Asia right now?
Well, I think in Southeast Asia there is still a lot to do all the way from the infrastructure on the supply side. We were just discussing it now. And basically selling more and more to this emerging middle class. And the interesting thing about this emerging middle class is that as they cover their basic needs, which, subsistence, homing, education, karaoke machine, as I discovered in Vietnam, they start to spend on travel. And so the first dollar that they spend is likely to be on a super app or on a travel platform. So the first dollar they spend is on a digital channel. And so there's a whole new market coming online, which is very exciting.
Okay, so you're seeing a common trend on the rise of super apps in Asia, right? Do you see that being translated to a market like Europe?
Not anytime soon. It's going to take a while here. I think it's you have. I'm not an expert on Europe actually, so but you have people who are they don't have a big problem to solve. You can use a credit card and buy stuff here. You can get consumer credit here. You can do most of the things. It might not be very convenient, but there's no massive impetus to try lots of new things because you can pretty much get by on the 20, 30-year-old technology that most of the people in Europe use. Okay. Whereas in Asia, you don't have these services, so you're more open to using something which is
convenient.
Think about mobile wallet. The U.S. is finally catching up to China. So 4 years ago, China was 50 times the size of U.S. Now it's only 25 times the size. So U.S. mobile wallet usage is about 50 billion a year, whereas China's 12.5 trillion US dollars a year.
Okay, Andrea, you want to add anything? You are the expert in Europe. You sit in Cambridge. Still part of Europe.
Yes, for the moment. I think it's going to take a long time here in Europe. The regulatory environment will make it a lot harder to create these large and powerful ecosystems. You've seen what the European Union has done to monitor Google. But also, I think that the thing that we were talking about before, the element of trust, is already quite well established in Europe, particularly around banks. Now, they need to innovate and they need to open up, they need to turn digital, but there is already a player in the ecosystem that is trusted by the consumer.
Okay.
And the market has developed around that for many, many years or centuries. So I think it's going to take a while.
Okay, so now let's talk specifically about travel. But travel startups. So Andrea, you invested in TravelStart a few years ago. So on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being happiest, how would you rate your happiness index with TravelStart?
We actually did a review not long ago of our 3-year period together with the team. So we actually looked at real numbers. I would have to give it a 9 in the sense that, in the sense that we monitor all our companies that way. You'd be surprised how many companies, even though they are at scale and profitable, they still cannot forecast 1 or 2 years out. So the way we monitor it is we look at the companies that can forecast 2-3 years out, plus or minus 10%. And you'll be surprised how few there are. And TravelStart is within the top 10%. So automatically, I'd have to give it a 9.
Okay. So William, how would you rate your investment in Portier, like 1 to 10? You're probably a tougher investor than he is now.
No, I mean, he requires people to make money. So I'm a little earlier stage, and it was more of an idea.
Okay.
So I would say Their execution has been quite good. Their ability to raise money has been less good. But that actually helped them to some extent. Because before, they were buying all these Samsung phones, and they're really expensive. And then they didn't have any money. So then they got Samsung to put up the phones.
Okay.
Selling hotels is a pain in the butt. You know, you got to go and knock on there. And so they didn't have any money. So they couldn't hire salespeople. So instead, they partnered with the telcos. And the telcos are already selling phone systems to the hotels.
Okay.
And this was just an
So you found another
upsell.
way.
And so the telco sales forces are doing all our sales for us.
Okay.
So having, not having $200 million from SoftBank Vision sometimes can be a good thing.
Yeah, it gets you more creative. So Lin, I mean, you joined Cambon Partners to advise them on Asia and China. What kind of deals have you done in Asia? Can you disclose some?
Without mentioning the names, I first want to say what kind of deals we do, what kind of logic we do. First is we help foreign strategic companies to enter China by acquisition or investing in Chinese companies. That's one angle. And another angle is to help the Chinese strategics and funds with travel, let's say travel portfolio, to go global by acquiring companies overseas or investing in overseas startups.
So right now, which is the bigger appetite? Going into China or coming out of China? Which is the bigger appetite?
I would say really half-half, but in a different field. You know, foreign strategics tend to want to go into China, capture some market share, capture a piece of distribution. So they are looking for companies who are able to basically sell their products and distribute for them. And on the other way, the Chinese companies are rather buying supplier content, basically management brands, supply resources, these kind of things. So
right.
they want to secure products. So the logic is if this company can invest in a foreign specialist and empower this company by Chinese traffic, then they can boost the value of the company. So that's
okay. So do both of you agree with William, who basically categorically said that European startups in Europe are not going to get any funding in China right now? You said that, didn't you?
It's difficult.
It's difficult. Would you?
I think William mentioned something before that resonates a lot, particularly given that I'm based in Cambridge. Chinese are coming over to Europe to look for deep tech. So if you take Huawei, they're opening a huge development center in Cambridge with about 500 engineers. So at the moment they are coming out to look for deep tech, but that's really the only thing we see.
Okay.
I see beyond this. I also see they're not probably going to invest in travel technology startups, but they will invest in even bigger money into companies like hotel management brands, river cruises, things that they think they can just pull their traffic into this company, and that's another type of investment.
Right. So what I notice about the market is like we have a really consolidation of capital, right, and also consolidation of supply, right. At the same time, travelers, we keep saying they want independent, unique, authentic experiences, right. So there seems to be like a chasm to me opening up in travel between this consolidation of capital and then. How do you reconcile this divide? How do you empower all these independents and creatives to create all these unique, authentic experiences that keep our customers happy?
So China might not be the leader in AI technology in the world. It's not. It might have a little bit of lead in data, but it's probably leading in terms of actual implementation and use of machine learning. So what are they using it for? They're using it for personalization. So they're automatically personalizing everybody's experience. And right now, if you are not using machine or at least algorithms to personalize experience in China, you can't be competitive at all. The money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much user acquisition you have. You just will not be competitive. The only company that's managed to break through and become kind of a leader, which is ByteDance, TikTok,
yes. Yeah.
They're using machine learning to do personalization, and they just delivered a better experience.
Right.
So I would say that yes, there's a huge amount of consolidation, but technology is driving uniqueness. Technology is driving. I'll give you an example. Sephora. So on WeChat, You have people read the articles from Sephora. They follow Sephora. They read the articles. They buy stuff. We have a system that hooks into the CRM for Sephora. We know everything that they've bought, what they're reading, where they live, what temperature it is, all that stuff. And in WeChat, as opposed to Facebook, in WeChat, you don't have to pay. But if somebody follows you, you can spam them once a week. Now,
that wouldn't be allowed here.
Well, it's
right?
trust-based.
Yeah.
So if you spam them with something that's crap, they'll unfollow you. And it costs between like 10 and 40 US dollars to get one real follower. So people are using, what we're doing is we're taking all that data and we're taking whatever Sephora is pushing and we're combining it and creating a unique message for each user for each week.
Right. Andrea, are you seeing anything interesting in Europe?
Oh, and that was 2016.
Oh, wow.
That's not
That's so
now.
ahead.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything interesting happening in travel? I mean, we've been talking about personalization, a long time, so have you seen anything interesting happening in that space?
Well, at the moment, there's a lot of investments in the supply chain, in differentiating the product on the supply chain. I think in Europe, the consumer online is very sophisticated. You have very powerful brands and brand association. So at the moment, you really have to innovate hard to attract the attention to the consumer. And so most of the investment is going, at the early stage, is going towards that.
Okay. So staying with Andrea, your family runs an independent hotel company in Costa Rica, right? So you come from a family of hoteliers, right?
Yep.
So what is it about the internet economy that favors independence, or is that just a myth that we, say to keep us happy?
Well, it's not a myth at all. Let me give you some real-life experience. So about 10, 15 years ago, in our hotels, about 50% of the occupancy was sold through tour operator and wholesalers. They came to you at the beginning of the season. They blocked thousands of rooms for the season. They negotiated very low price, and they asked for release dates about 30 days before arrival, which they never respected. They usually occupied only about half of the blocking. They told you that they paid you in 30 days. They ended up paying you 60 days, and you had to live with it. Now the internet channel has taken over a lot of that market. So now we have a direct channel to the consumer. We get prepayments. We have better rates. And so we're able to diversify our channels much more significantly, which usually means lower risk and higher rates. So actually, it has been so successful that now the OTA are becoming too big of a channel, and now we have to rein them in and give volume back to the wholesalers to keep a better balance.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I know with your interest in hospitality, and anybody want to comment, in the huge funding that's going into companies like Yeoh and Tribo, and I know that you're very interested in that space as well. So want to share,
Yes, that business model, the capital light hotel business model, is very interesting. And there's a lot of competition, and now it's starting in many countries. Yeoh is coming over to Europe. There are Latin American coming out of Latin America, coming over to Europe. We're starting to see it going down into the hostels layer. So it's a very interesting market, but it's more of a property development with hotel operation attached investment thesis. So it's one where there isn't a lot of technology. And being a technology investor at Amadeus is not an area that attracts us a lot.
What about you, Lin? Is there a space that you're interested in, or you're working in that space? Some of the deals that you're working on right now? Which you will announce in three months' time?
We look at the vacation rental, but not exactly the Yeoh type of companies. The things related to hospitality, mainly we are looking for 4 or 5 star, like good brands that can really come to China and manage the assets. So, for example, in China, a lot of state-owned enterprises, they own assets which doesn't belong to their core business, so they each own many hotels, and these are the next 10 years, I would say, I see these assets being in the marketplace, and they need to be branded. So hotel brands have, or resort brands have actually opportunity to enter China
Right.
because these
Massive
needs
opportunity
these
there.
service and good brands.
Okay, so I want to share two more slides that Louise actually prepared. And mobile, talking about mobile, big story in Asia. So let's show two more slides on how connectivity has rewired life in Asia, basically. And then also, this has led to a rise of a very complex mobile payment landscape, if you look at that, and so how do you navigate that? So again, it points to the rise of the super app, right? So I'm going to ask you three, you are clearly for super apps. So Andrea, who will win, super apps or travel platforms?
I think there will be a bifurcation of the market. I see super apps focusing very much on high frequency, low complexity transactions. So I know what I want. I just want it fast and fulfilled efficiently. And I see travel platform become much more content-centric for complex itinerary experiences, so lower frequency, higher complexity, higher value transactions.
Right. Lin?
I see them coexist for quite a while, but I think at the end, I still vote for super apps.
Okay, let's go to the audience, okay? Who votes for super apps? Hands up. All right. Who votes for travel platforms? Kind of equal, the rest, I'm not sure. All right, so I want to talk about beyond travel, since it's through the looking glass, and I know you guys cover things that are beyond travel. You told me last night that your company is the largest investor in laboratory-grown meat.
Yes, clean meat,
Clean meat.
lab-grown meat.
All right, okay. And you're soon going to be producing milk without the cow.
And we're producing it. It's
You're
just
producing-
really expensive.
All right.
So, I mean, we got $400 hamburger.
Right now.
We're not quite there yet, but it
Okay.
started off as like a $20,000 hamburger. So we're 2 years out.
Okay, 2 years out from producing mass laboratory-grown meat.
Yeah, within the right price range.
And that's going to change the whole food industry, right? Hospitality,
Hopefully.
airline catering, you're right. So, Andrea, I mean, what area interests you in terms of investment?
Genetics.
Genetics.
Genetics data.
So you're talking about like gene editing, CRISPR technology.
Gene editing, anything that has to do with leveraging gene data that has become 1,000 times cheaper than it was 10, 15 years ago to develop drugs, develop better healthcare distribution system, and basically improve the health of the population.
Right. All this have major impact on travel, right? Because the longer people live,
The longer they travel.
the longer they travel. So if you could edit one gene, like solve one problem, what would it be?
Blindness.
Blindness.
Genetic blindness, which is being solved. It's going to take a while, but it
Okay.
is being worked on.
Okay. Lin, what about you? Beyond travel, like what's an area that...
Unfortunately, I don't go beyond travel. I'm
So
very
you
loyal
really
to the
travel.
travel industry, but travel is such a big industry. It really connects everything. I mean, from creating a emotional experience. That's you can qualify a lot of things as travel. So we say lifestyle, moving from A to B is travel. So that I covered that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a consumer, I actually, kind of fear the future of super apps, right? Because I feel like that's too consolidated and that's giving too much power to, a couple of people, and we're seeing that problem. So let me go to the audience, okay, and ask, what kind of world do you want? A consolidated one or a fragmented one? So consolidated world. Okay, fragmented world. So
Yeah.
here we are all.
We're in Europe, yeah.
We're in Europe. All right.
Fragmented.
Okay, now corporations like Accor taking a huge interest in startups. So we're seeing also, VCs versus, corporate investments, right? And you ran a corporate
I did
fund as
corporate
well.
before, and now we're doing non-corporate.
So two of you, what's the advantage of VC versus corporate investment?
Well, I'm not sure whether I define it as an advantage. VC have clarity and purity of purpose. Our goal is only to maximize the value of the shares we buy. For a corporate, investing is, by definition, a secondary activity. So there's always an interplay and a dual trade-off between those activities that companies find hard sometimes to understand.
Okay. What about?
Well, so I did both.
Yeah.
And so the
Which
best,
is kinda.
neither are particularly kind. But for corporates, they can add value. The problem is that for corporate VCs, there is a bit of a mix. So the best performing corporate VCs are the ones that don't try and mix. they keep the investment side a bit separate from the commercial side. Now, just the fact that they're invested can, through serendipity, create opportunity. But trying to jam the strategic in with the investment does not generally work too well.
Okay.
So we think there's a huge opportunity there. For us, we're running corporate innovation programs for something like 20 multinationals. We do Visa everywhere.
So how
China.
many deals you do? You do 40 startups a year. You're like a factory. 40 startups a
Yeah,
year.
we try not to say it that way, but yeah, we're investing in 150 to 170 companies per year, and I'm doing about 40 investments a year.
Wow. And you? What's the scale?
Well, scale it down by a factor of 10.
Okay.
I think that would be the same as Andrea.
All right, so now let's go rapid fire, okay? The coolest startup coming from your fund right now, travel or non-travel? The coolest startup.
Okay, so it's a company called Miro, very quickly.
Miro?
Yes, so you have artificial intelligence mapping your face and expressions. This company actually tracks the body. Now, training faces is easy because usually...
But that's been banned in San Francisco, by the way.
Yeah,
I
whatever.
just read it, yeah.
Who cares? So for this company, how do you get body data?
Wow.
Because there's clothing, and it messes up the data. So where do you find millions of naked people? So what this company did is a nice growth hack in that they partnered with marathons. And people who run marathons generally are not wearing very much, and they've conveniently put a number on their front. Not only that, they pay to have their data collected. And they love it. So basically, when you're running your race, you want to have your pictures. But with most marathons, you get your pictures after they come back from the Philippines 6 weeks later.
Okay.
We're using machine learning. We're getting actually paid to collect their data, and you get your pictures in real time.
Okay.
So now we've tracked 10 million people. And our models can now be used for autonomous driving, so pedestrians, so we don't run people over and things like that.
All right, okay, a naked marathon would work wonders for you then. What about you? What's the coolest startup coming from your fund?
Mine is not as cool.
Yeah.
I guess it's a company called Foremost, which has developed a technology to track and predict how proteins fold, which is the beginning of the process of gene mutations. And so,
wow, that's super cool.
So if they crack that, they can crack the reason why gene mutates and how they mutate.
I think that's super cool. I mean, that does a lot more good for the world than his startup. But okay.
Come on, we're not going to run over people. Let's save lives.
Lin, what about you?
Well, we're doing investment
the coolest startup that you've seen, from your experience in China.
You want a Chinese one or you want, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We're running out of time.
A deal we did is quite good called B Network. It's a hotel booking platform for business people. That's, I think, when they attend meetings and conferences, etc., that's a platform specialized for them.
Okay.
And I also like, for example, Shiji from China. They are developing
Shiji Technologies.
Yeah, they're developing new technologies to apply to the supermarket. You can walk in and basically facial recognition and just take the stuff and go out. Yeah, and I think that's quite cool.
All right. Okay, so we really need to move things along. So which market in Asia is the most misunderstood?
China.
China?
Yeah, it's probably true.
Vietnam.
Vietnam?
China.
China. Okay. What's the dumbest thing that entrepreneurs do?
Talk about their product.
Plan in the future as if it was an extrapolation of the present.
Yeah. Exiting too late.
Okay. What's the dumbest thing people like you do?
Think by analogs and comparables.
Okay.
Listen to ourselves.
We've just been listening to you. Okay, what is
I disagree with you. I think the dumbest thing is to follow the hot areas of investment.
to follow that?
To follow the hot areas of investment.
VCs are like sheep. They kind of like go in herds, chew the grass down to nothing, and then they get slaughtered.
Okay, and so you want to stay out of that herd. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to do word association. I'm just going to throw words at you. Okay. Google.
Yeah, I did this before, so I'm going to pass. But last time I said they were evil.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Too powerful.
Okay. Facebook.
I did this last time too. I said they were also evil. So.
Facebook. In trouble?
Scared.
Scared.
Thank God they're not in China.
We have something worse.
Alibaba.
Well, they're scary.
Yeah, scary.
Alibaba. Facing competition.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. And last but not least, Amsterdam. One word for Amsterdam.
It's really nice in the springtime.
A history.
History.
It will never be the same.
Thank you. On that note, please join me in thanking my panelists, Lin Xu, Andrea, and William.